Well, people of the internet, the rumors were actually true. A Harry Potter TV series retelling the original 7-book story is official. It's happening. And I have to say, it looks like the vast majority of Potter fans are not happy. At least not from the reaction I have seen online. You guys are freaking out there right now.
How did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
You know, it's the internet. It's understandable. There's going to be a lot of panic. And personally, I think it's a little bit too much for reasons that I'll explain here shortly. Now, I know, guys, this is a series near and dear to many of you out there, as it is to me. Frankly, that's why we care so much and why the reactions are usually so strong. So trust me, I get where you're coming from. It's because you care. It's because you love this world and you don't want to see them mess it up. However, I'm just going to walk through a few of the critiques and a few of the problems that I've seen from people so far, and then talk to you about why I think maybe they're not valid, or maybe why I think you should look at it with more of a glass half full than a glass half empty approach. So one of the first critiques I've seen is that it's only been 10 years since the last movie. Well, it's actually been a little bit more than that. It was 2011 for Deathly Hallows Part 2. However, if you think about the first film, it debuted all the way back in 2001. So when I think of it like that, I mean, it's been more than 20 years since we told this first story, the story of the Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone, depending on where you live. So when it comes to that story, I definitely think that enough time has passed. Now, the next concern I see is that a lot of people say the movies are already so well done and that you don't need to redo it. They were already so good. And I agree the movies were good, but I think there may be a little bit of rose-colored glasses, a little bit of nostalgia that's kind of slipping in here because, guys, I read the books before the movies. I know there's not a lot of people out there who can say that. I mean, you had to be born at just the right time to be in on this before it kind of just exploded into what it is today. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the book, was released in July of 2000. So 4 books were out before the first movie ever happened. So I had read all 4 of those before that first movie came out, and there were a lot of fan expectations going in. And I'll be honest with you, man, I was one of those people who was critiquing every little thing, right? I was a kid, so it was just like, oh my gosh, they changed this, they changed that, nitpicking all the little things. But as I grew up, over time, I learned to appreciate the movies for what they were. They weren't meant to be an exact word for word, beat by beat copy of the books. That's not just what movies are. And again, I was young at the time, but now I've learned it was a retelling of that story. And so by and large, I feel like the movies did a good job, but I don't think they were perfect. There were a lot of things that they left out, guys, a lot of things that they changed. Maybe people haven't read the books recently, so some of these things they've forgotten, and it's almost like the movies are sort of your more dominant memory. But just thinking off the top of my head here as I was preparing this video, here are just a few I thought of. First of all, Ron's character. Ron's character was completely changed. Now, I'm not talking about Rupert Grint. I'm talking about the portrayal of Ron, the dialogue, everything they gave Ron in the movie. Very, very different from book Ron. In fact, it was kind of a joke in the fandom is that they gave a lot of Ron's lines actually to Hermione because she's kind of like the source of all information in the movies. But Ron was way more of a strong character in the books, whereas in the movies, he kind of just ended up being relegated to this comic relief character instead. So I see this as a great opportunity to actually showcase the book version of Ron and how strong of a character he really was. Dumbledore. Oh my gosh, how can we forget Dumbledore and Calmly?
How did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
Right? I mean, this one you have to consider they did change actors, unfortunately, due to Richard Harris's death, something that they did not anticipate. And Michael Gambon really came in and just played a completely different version of Dumbledore. Now, I don't know how much of it was on him, how much of it was on the direction that he got, but for me personally, he just never became Dumbledore for me. He didn't have that same kind of twinkle in his eye that Richard Harris did. Now, I know a lot of people also say Richard Harris may not have been able to do some of the scenes that Gambon was able to do, but I feel like there's got to be kind of a happy medium in there. I also wasn't a huge fan of the end of movie 5. If you go back and read the scene, read the battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort at the end of Order of the Phoenix, and then watch the movie. The effects in the movie were great. They were fantastic. But the way that battle played out, I thought the movie made Dumbledore look so weak. Like he was struggling through that whole battle. You go and read that book, Dumbledore is just chill, man. He is in total control of that situation, not panicking whatsoever until Voldemort starts messing around in Harry's mind. And that's when Dumbledore knows, okay, this is really serious at this point. Then you have like Harry and Ginny's relationship, which, I mean, the movie's just completely mishandled that, in my opinion. The Marauder storyline, it's not even there in the movies. The Gaunt family and Voldemort's past, there's so much more that they can do there. You've got Winky, you've got Spew, you've got Peeves, who wasn't in the movie at all. I mean, how can we forget the Quidditch World Cup, which apparently enough didn't even happen in that game for them to show it in the movie. We just get the nice little intro sequence and that was it. The third task completely changed from the book. The end of Deathly Hallows, that honestly maybe some of my biggest complaints is the way that battle plays out in the movie. It was like all about for special effects. You know, they wanted just that bombastic ending, which you have an incredible ending in the books, and they just completely changed. I mean, we have this weird like Voldemort and Harry tackling each other, just flying through the air. Something weird going on with their faces. They're like trying to choke each other. What was that anyway? The final battle between the two doesn't even take place in the Great Hall. And then when Harry defeats Voldemort, he doesn't crumple to the floor. He kind of just vanishes like he's somehow special. Whereas that was such a huge focus in the book, is that he died like a man because he was in fact just a normal human. There was nothing special about him. Okay, I'm done. I promise I'm done. But you guys, hopefully you get the point. There was a lot of things that changed. And again, I say this as someone who enjoyed the movies. I don't want you to think I'm just totally hating on them there. But when I see so many people online saying they were perfect, they were not perfect. They were really good. They certainly helped with the cultural phenomenon and just the explosion of Harry Potter being what it is, but they were not perfect. The other big critique I keep seeing is that you can't replace the actors and actresses. It's like Dan is Harry, Rupert is Ron, Hermione is Emma. And then very tragically, we have all the actors and actresses who have passed away, such as Richard Harris, such as Alan Rickman, Richard Griffiths. And I agree here. These were iconic portrayals. They were. But here's the thing. The TV series is not going to replace the movies. It's not like the movies are just erased from the earth and now this is the definitive story. That's not what it is. You can always go back and watch the movies anytime. Nothing is going to replace those stories. Nothing is going to replace those actors. They will always still be there, just as the book will still always be there. And again, for those of us who read the book before the movies, we had to get used to this too, because it's almost like you have to treat it as a separate thing. Yes, it is all part of the same world, but it is a retelling of that story. I have the book version of the Harry Potter universe in my mind, and I have the movie version of the Harry Potter universe in my mind. The book version is still the one that I vastly prefer. Who knows, when this one comes out, maybe I'll prefer it to the movies, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll prefer the movies and say they actually did it better. But I do think this kind of extreme instant reaction of no, it can't possibly be better, it's just over the top. I think it can. Does it have a very tall order? Absolutely. And that leads us directly into one of the reasons I'm excited about this is because it is TV rather than a movie. I mean, one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest issues that movies have is when you're adapting these books, you almost have to cut so much just for the sake of time. Movie 1 and movie 2 are very faithful adaptations, I would say. So personally, I think the first 2 seasons of this show are going to be the most fascinating to see because the movies, even for those of us who were really critical, those first 2 actually did a pretty good job in terms of being accurate to the source material. I feel like movie 3 and then especially movie 4, because that's when the books just got so big, they had to start cutting out so many things and truncating a lot of storylines, even cutting out certain characters entirely. That's when I really think you'll get to see the strength of telling this in the form of a TV show rather than a movie. And also, guys, it's HBO. They have a really good track record. I mean, some of the best TV out there right now is on HBO. All right, now to be totally fair to you guys, would I have preferred something different? This is where I probably agree with you guys because I think I would have preferred something different. They could have told the story of the Marauders, of the Founders, a story about completely new witches and wizards set in a completely different time period. Of course, there was that rumor of a TV series based around Hogwarts Legacy. To be honest, I'm still not sure that that is out of the question. Who knows? Maybe that's still a possibility as something that they could introduce in addition to this Harry Potter TV series. And of all the criticisms that I've seen out there, to me, this one is the one that is the most valid because the world itself is so rich. There is so much there. And as we've just seen with Hogwarts Legacy, there is so much that you can tell in this world, so many different stories. I think a lot of fans would have preferred them taking a chance on that rather than retelling this story again that we all know so well already. Now, I'm not saying I agree with this next part here, but I do think the rationalization of it, when you think about it from WB's perspective, goes something like this. Look at Fantastic Beasts. That was something set in a different time period with a few characters, that we knew from the main series, but it did not perform the way they were hoping. Cursed Child, at least in terms of the story, was rough. I think everyone would agree with that. Personally, I haven't seen the play, but I have heard from a lot of people who have that as a play, it's actually pretty good. It's enjoyable. So I think from WB's perspective, they're probably seeing this as, look, we tried with Fantastic Beasts, and for whatever reason, it didn't work. I think a lot of fans might have some thoughts on why it didn't work, and maybe they're making the wrong conclusions from that failure. And then I have to be honest, before Cursed Child, I absolutely wanted more Harry Potter. I wanted to see what things were like for him as an adult, even though I thought his story ended in a very clear, conclusive way. I mean, how awesome would a series have been just like about Harry and Ron's adventures as Aurors? Each book or each TV series or each movie could have just been like a case that they're going on and solving. Very straightforward. You don't have to do anything super crazy. But then instead we got something like Cursed Child, which just made so many egregious mistakes, in my opinion, again, as a fan, when it comes to the story, when it comes to the established lore, that I personally just take issue with. So maybe it's a good thing that they aren't trying to do that and just tell a completely different story with these same characters again. They're saying, okay, look, you know what? It's already such a great story. We know the books are great. The movies were pretty good too. That being said, they had to leave out a lot because of the sheer fact that they were movies and not a TV series. Let's see if we can retell this story again as a television series with more time, with a completely new cast, and see if we actually may be able to improve upon it. And as they have said in their releases, introduce it to a new generation of Wizarding World fans. And that overall world part is one of the things that I am most fascinated to see. I mean, will they reuse Hogwarts? Will they reuse some of the sets, or will it be just completely different? Will they want a totally new look at all of this? So my main message here, guys, is just take a step back, take a deep breath, don't panic. Even if it ends up bad, we still have the books and we still have the original movies. That's it. Could we end up something better? Maybe. So I'm going to choose to be optimistic. I'm going to choose to be excited and wait to see more information. But with the success of Hogwarts Legacy, and hopefully with the success of this, maybe that could lead to further stories. Maybe that could lead to all those other things that we want to see in this world that maybe they're a little hesitant to try right now. Maybe that could one day happen. I mean, now since I mentioned the idea of Harry and Ron as Aurors going out on little adventures, I can't get that out of my head. I want to see that show. Who knows? Maybe one day, but sound off in the comments, guys. I know you will. Try to keep it civil. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.